Today we're going to focus on the person a bit and the programs. We're going to cover how her life prepared her for the job she does, what she thinks you need to do to be successful in HR, and make a demonstrable business impact as she's done. And we're going to talk about a company with an employee base of over 50,000 direct employees, and how she's managing culture and values to ensure engagement and retention, and doing a great job, by the way. And if that doesn't sound hard enough, they're trying to manage a merger with one of their largest rivals. I'm sure you've seen that in the news. So I want to welcome Liz McAuliffe, the CHRO, the EVP of HR for T-Mobile US Inc. to the stage. So welcome, Liz. Good morning.
Thank you.
So a little bio on Liz McAuliffe, and they sent me a really long bio. I'm going to try to summarize some of this.
It's a long bio because I've been around a long time.
Well, but we look great, don't we? So, Liz has over 25 years experience. Was I allowed to say that?
Sure.
I guess so. Helping Fortune 500 companies in retail, consumer products, telecom, develop and maximize human capital to grow the business. Liz is, as we said, EVP of T-Mobile. It's the third largest U.S. wireless carrier today with over $40 billion in annual revenues, and they support over 50,000 employees. She partners with the CEO and other leaders to fuel what is a really unique culture of unbridled, positive enthusiasm and engagement. They've received numerous HR awards, and under Liz's leadership, listen to some of the numbers, and great companies measure everything. So they've had a 20% year-over-year decrease in employee relations complaints. They've had an FTE attrition decrease 3% year-over-year across their frontline population, and their internal mobility rate has virtually doubled from 18% to 32%. And Liz underwent an enormous HR service delivery model overhaul about 2 years ago, and they went from a healthy 88.4% employee engagement, and most of us would be happy with that. Following the change, their employee engagement went up to 96%. Okay, she works directly with their board of directors on comp and other issues, and handles all their succession planning. Prior to her work at T-Mobile as CHRO, she was their VP of Rewards and Operations, as well as Senior Vice President of the HR Business Partners team. So she's played a key role in due diligence of their acquisition of Metro PCS and subsequent integration. She's got international experience through 18-month expat assignment at Starbucks as the Vice President partner in China, which is their fastest growing market, I believe, or one of them, as well as a longer tenure at Starbucks in various positions in HR, and also in their legal and corporate affairs department. She started her career as an attorney in private practice, advising on labor and employment matters. Liz received her bachelor's in journalism. Do we have a job for you? We can do that. Journalism and history from University of Massachusetts, and a Juris Doctor from Northeast University School of Law. Last year, she was our CHRO of the Year winner for Sustainable Workforce in recognition of her amazing leadership. And if you're confused about how busy she is, I love your Twitter handle. It's @LizInMotion. Okay. I think that's just awesome. So we have a quick video we're going to roll about T-Mobile, about their culture. So can we roll tape, please?
The first conclusion is not a program, it's who we are. We're a company that looks like our customers, where 60% of our employees identify as being part of a minority group.
Everyone feels they can let their uniqueness shine through and experience a sense of belonging.
Diversity is a competitive advantage for us. Look at our results.
It's a non-negotiable core value that we celebrate strongly. This is the fabric that became the uncarrier.
And that dovetails so nicely into our
Makes
question.
my heart sing.
So you just described yourself as the T-Mobile as America's uncarrier. So are you the CHRO? And if so, how? Like, how do you differ? Do you like tell dirty jokes? Do you drink at lunch? How are you the CHRO?
Okay, well, nice question. Unlike you, I am really bad at telling jokes, dirty or otherwise, so that's out. And I think if I had a drink at lunch, I'd be under my desk asleep. So that's out too. But I would say that being the head of HR at T-Mobile with John Ledger as our CEO, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with John and the energy and kind of the brashness he brings to the table, it does require a non-traditional approach. Call it un-CHRO, but it has made me and my team think very differently about how we've approached innovating and creating a different way of equipping our leaders and our employees for success. It's been a great ride. Now, we do try very hard not to be seen as the fun police. You know, we've got a very young demographic and a very, like I said, vibrant one. So we've worked real hard over the last couple of years to change a kind of traditional perception of HR as, you know, governance, compliance, and I don't know about you, but many things drive me crazy. Few things drive me more crazy and irritate me in the workplace than being in an elevator or being in a meeting and there's some chit chat going on, casual conversation. You all know what I'm going to say, right? And somebody's about to say something and they glance at you and then they sarcastically say, well, I can't say that. HR's in the room. It makes me nuts. So, you know, irreverent comments that are clever, you know, bring it on. If it's inappropriate, it's inappropriate whether or not HR is in the room, so don't say it. And that's where we don't compromise, right? We are absolutely committed to ensuring that we protect the culture that we've got and that there's a respectful, inclusive environment for every employee. And, you know, as you saw in that video, we encourage that inclusion and that diversity. And for us, it means everything from, you know, magenta hair to piercings to tattoos to gender identity, all of it. You know, the list goes on. And that's such a huge part of our culture, and it's a huge part of what fuels our uncarrier business success. So it's fun being an un-CHRO.
Un-CHRO, that's great. So the way we're going to be doing this is going to be sort of like the inside the actor's studio, and I will try to, if time allows us, to go out to the audience for some questions, but there are a few I want to get through first. So let's talk about how you got into this career. I mean, we all know you're, you know, a former attorney that moved into HR. How did you move from being sort of employment counsel to now ultimately being a CHRO?
So I got recruited to go in-house at Starbucks. I had been a partner in a law firm in Seattle, and I was ready for a change. And I had been in the legal department for a couple of years doing a lot of counseling work, which is really what I love to do, and managing outside counsel in litigation, which is why I got out of private practice in the first place, because I didn't want to be litigating myself. So it was nice to be able to manage somebody else to do it. And one of the first big pieces of litigation I managed when I was there was a class action involving store managers in California. This was back in 2003, 4. And we wound up settling that case for a large amount of money and switching store managers from exempt to non-exempt status in California. And for those of you who've got retail operations or other frontline operations in California, you have probably followed suit because of the very employee-friendly laws there. So through that, I got to work really closely with Starbucks business leaders, the CEO, the head of the business for North America at that time. And it was great exposure. I really enjoyed the HR business pieces of what I was learning and what I was doing. And I was being encouraged by the head of HR at that point and the general counsel to move over to to HR. And I was like, but I'm a lawyer, and I spent a lot of time in law school, and I don't know. And then one day, the then CEO, again, a guy named Jim Donald, who's a great guy, my office was an interior office, and it was sort of a major corridor for people to walk by. And I was on the computer, my back was at the door, and all of a sudden I hear plop on my desk. And I turn around, and there's Jim Donald, the CEO, saying, "So I hear they want you to move to HR." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Why haven't you done it?" I said, "Well, because I'm a lawyer," and da-da-da-da-da. And he goes, "Why not? Why not do it? We've got your back. You're what?" And he goes, "You're what, 40-something years old?" Which, yeah, maybe he shouldn't have said that, but I was. He goes, "If it doesn't work out, you can go back to being a lawyer." Not every lawyer can be anything but a lawyer, but you can be, so try it. And when the CEO plops down on your desk and tells you to do it, you say yes. There's another story like that last night somebody mentioned, same thing. Lawyer.
Max Langenkamp and Tanya Axelson are also recovering attorneys. So probably seen it at the 12th meeting. Yeah.
So that's how I made the switch. It really was as simple as that. And went into an HR director role at Starbucks in the corporate headquarters, heading HR for some of the back office pieces of the North America business, and then did a field gig leading the HR function for the Pacific Northwest retail, and then went to China for a couple of years before heading over to T-Mobile.
So you move through this progression, then you take over HR, and if I read the details in the nomination forms and the bios, then you decided to just break it. So let's talk about when you broke it and rebuilt it from scratch. So tell the audience about the crew, like your peeps, your crew there, right? So you reimagined, they're actually called, the department is called the HR crew. I'm not making that up, that's not like an Elliott joke, just to let you know. And they uniquely reorganized around the three areas of HR services, and they're called, I'm going to just tell everyone here, they're called the talent scouts, the career agents, and the employee success partners. So explain the thought process and what you did to sort of reimagine HR and make it more fun, more friendly.
Sure. I think it's really important to start out by saying we weren't broken, right? We weren't doing anything wrong before we did this. We had a fairly traditional HR model with HR business partners and centralized talent acquisition, et cetera. And about 4 or 5 years ago, the uncarrier, that culture, that brash, very, very frontline culture started to really take hold at T-Mobile. And that's when we first set out to change how we were approaching delivering HR services to employees and to leaders. And we started out eliminating performance ratings and formal performance reviews. We got rid of the annual employee survey, and we went to a monthly pulse approach. So that's kind of the first two big things out of the gate. My former boss, the former CHRO, he was a little more old school, I would say, and we tried to push him a little further, and didn't have a whole lot of success, which was fine. We were still delivering great service. He retired. I stepped into the role 3 years ago, and it was almost like I had a mandate to lead the team differently. And John and the other senior leadership team members, my peers, they were hungry to see what we were going to do. And we have 34,000 frontline employees. We're 52,000 employees now. We've got 34,000 employees in the front line. That's 17 call centers that are our call centers, our employees in there. And thousands of retail stores, company-owned and operated retail stores across the country. And we thought, okay, how are we going to change this to really emphasize what we think is the most important thing we do for this company at this time, and that is that we HR do. And we determined that was serving as stewards for every single employee in their personal growth and career success. And we talked about this last night as well, I think some people, but the critical role we as HR play in the individual personal growth of employees. And for us, a lot of our employees, it's their first job. A lot of people, especially in the call centers, they're coming from communities that are, they're not economically prosperous. There's not a lot going on. A lot of them come from difficult family situations. So whatever we can do to help with their personal growth, whether or not they stay with T-Mobile for the long run, that's going to help us as a business, but it's going to also help us contribute to them and to their families and ultimately to the community. So it's really, really important for us. And then obviously career success as well, and retaining as many employees as we can to grow and develop their careers and become leaders with us. So we looked at our population of about 550 employees in HR, and we realized we were so heavily skewed toward this big back office HR function as compared to the number of employees we had in customer-facing roles, employee-facing roles in the field. We thought we got to flip that around. And as we thought about flipping that around, we also recognized that in order to deliver on that mission of fostering and stewarding personal growth and career success, we needed more interaction between employees and HR folks, other than HR people showing up at a retail store to do an investigation, right? Because if that's the only time you see your HR person is when they're in a store or walking around your pod at a call center doing an investigation, are you going to reach out to that person when you've got questions about your career, you've got an issue with your coworker? No, it's going to fester and it's going to become an issue that warrants an investigation ultimately because it hasn't been resolved up front, or you're going to have an employee who's not engaged and who ultimately leaves. So we decided to rename those roles and bring them together as crews. So no more centralized talent acquisition, no more centralized learning and development folks who are reported back to headquarters but were sprinkled in the field. We increased those roles. We renamed HR business partners employee success partners, because really that's what they are. Again, if I need to reach out to HR, aren't I going to feel a lot more comfortable going to somebody whose title is employee success partner versus HR business partner? Talent Scout, that same mindset. We want our recruiters, our talent scouts to be part of this crew, looking not only externally at talent, but as scouting talent internally as well. And Career Agent, part of the crew that's intimately involved with those other two roles, working with the business to develop future leaders into bigger roles throughout the company, because internal promotion and internal mobility is really big for us. We've got a 90% goal in retail and care of internal promotions, and we've already hit it. So wow. That's the model, and it has been hugely, hugely successful.
So this was a sweeping overhaul of HR, and it was very risky. I mean, it could have backfired and not been popular. And T-Mobile's got this entrepreneurial reputation. I mean, and I follow John Ledger's Twitter feed, which is very authentic, at times a little out there, but I like the authenticity. So how did you get the executive committee, John Ledger, and other folks comfortable with such a dramatic reorganization of a key function like HR?
Yeah. It wasn't a hard sell, not at all. You know, our business focus has been on eliminating customer pain points. And John set out to do that from the beginning. So how many of you are in T-Mobile? Come on, raise your hands. So we were the first major wireless company here in the United States to eliminate contracts, right? And that was, we call these uncarrier moves. That was our first uncarrier move. You guys travel overseas. Isn't that cool? Global mobility, right? So free texting and data and all of that. It's about identifying and eliminating customer pain points. And so we took that same mindset into HR, and that's what we were focusing on, identifying and eliminating the pain points for our customers, our 52,000 employees that we serve every single day. So the SLT senior leadership team, they were hungry to see what we could do, and we worked very closely with our business partners and the whole HR team. It wasn't just the customer-facing folks who had to make a big evolution and a big turn here. It was the folks in the back office as well, in headquarters, who were rethinking and recalibrating how they partner with our employee-facing HR crews.
And that's why it's called the Employee Care Program, because it's model on customer?
That's right. So for our headquarters functions that do the program development and content development and things like that, and our traditional help desk, we've renamed that group of HR professionals as employee care. And again, we fashioned that after what we're doing in our call centers, our care organization. So as I said, we've got 17 call centers, and a couple of years ago, we transitioned to really, in the call center industry, a very revolutionary model. We've created communities of employees within these call centers. We call these communities team of experts, and no longer do they have very specific care subject matter expertise, like general care, or financial care, or technical care. Everybody in a community provides customer service on any subject that a customer calls in to talk about. We don't use IVR anymore. We don't use transfers. It's all in person or chat. So we took that same approach for our HR help desk that we call employee care, and it's that same model where we've got this team of experts who answer employee questions, the basic ones that any HR help desk would do, payroll, all that stuff. But we've also trained them to be able to answer the simplest, but sometimes not that simple to the employee questions about just normal people stuff. I'm nervous to talk to my manager. What should I do? The person sitting next to me, I'm allergic to their perfume. How do I handle that? And those simple but important questions to employees, if they can be answered by our employee care team, then that leaves our HR crew members to be focusing with employees on interactions that are more substantive and more focused on that personal growth and career success. So it's been a terrific turn for the employee care team as well.
Great. So I'd like to take some questions from the audience, you think? Maybe we'll give them a chance to chime in. But first, you need to tell us Apple or Android. Okay, we need to know.
Apple.
Apple. Okay.
Yeah,
so
Apple. In fact, this is the 10, and it's my second 10. And
do you get a good deal on that through T-Mobile? No, never mind.
I get it.
Get a really good deal.
But I'll tell you a funny story. I made what would be a rookie mistake, but I'm too old to be a rookie at this point. So this may be oversharing, but we had the Sprint HR team in headquarters last week, and we were doing integration planning in anticipation of a close happening hopefully soon. And we were on a break, and I had to run to the restroom, and I did something that I never, ever do. Can anybody guess what it is? I put my phone in the back pocket of my jeans. Yeah. Yeah, the screech apparently was heard down the hall, and I will tell you, they are waterproof. They are waterproof, but the sound for the phone didn't quite work the same way. So this is my second iPhone 10.
All right, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, you just think if you worked for another company, you probably would have had to buy one at a regular retail price. All right, questions from the audience for Liz? If you have to have questions.
It's early.
All right, we have one right over here. We're bringing a mic over. She was setting up the mic to you.
Oh, hi.
All right, Terry.
Thanks for sharing, Liz. I'd like to ask you a little about the change management process you went through as you re-engineered HR. And were there any unexpected roadblocks along the way? I'm sure you planned it, you had corporate support, you had the CEO support, which obviously is critical. I would love to hear more about the change management story to that.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the word change management. Change happens and you don't manage it. You communicate through it, and transparency, I think, is the key to any successful transition. So for my team, that meant being very transparent on a regular basis with the 600 HR employees who were waiting to see what we were going to do. And it meant being very transparent on a regular basis with the business leaders on where we were at with that process. It actually took longer than I had wanted, largely because the business leaders had a lot of input and a lot of feedback for us, which was great. The downside to that was, my team, my HR team, had to wait longer to know how, their worlds were going to change. And so balancing that was probably the most challenging part of the transformation, because certainly we didn't want to move quickly such that the business leaders weren't fully engaged and got their head around what we were doing and why we were doing it. So transparency, communication, you all know, if you don't communicate, even if you don't have anything new to say, people are going to make it up. So it's a lot better to communicate regularly and tell people that you're still working on it. Even though we know it's frustrating and you want to hear, we want to make sure that once we can communicate something, we're communicating something substantive. And so that was our approach, really. I went out, when we did roll it out, I did a cross-country tour of every call center. I visited all of our major retail markets. We do a lot of celebration, a lot of interactive work with our teams out in the field. So that was super important as well. And it wasn't just me, and it was my team. And then partnering with Callie Field, who's our head of care, and John Fryer, who's our head of retail as well, and being really visible with them and getting the visibility across their teams that this was a good thing. We were all super excited about it.
Great. We have time for one more question. Another question, everyone.
Hi, Liz. Thank you for your story. I think it was great on the things that you're doing at T-Mobile. My question is, with past integrations and as you look towards the future, you've really got two camps. You've got the resistors and you've got the adopters. So as you look towards future integrations, how do you balance the focus on building those early adopters into integration and also bringing those resistors, those that are resistant to change, around to make them feel like they're part of it and to get them behind and believing what you're trying to accomplish? And is that exclusive to HR, or do you try to incorporate ambassadors throughout the organization outside of the HR population that can help you accomplish that task.
And you're talking about merger and acquisition
Yeah.
integration, correct?
Just with integrations of new staff people coming in, and really just overall with cultural shifts as you try to move the dial of business.
So, with a merger the size of what we're doing, we're 52,000 employees, and Sprint is 30,000 employees. The planning has been going on for quite a while, the pre-integration planning. And the way I've approached it, and we did this with Metro to a certain extent as well. We purchased Metro PCS back it was about 6 years ago, actually. And that acquisition enabled us to go public. Fun fact, when we closed, first day we went public, I think our stock closed at $16 and something cents. And I didn't check yesterday's closing price, but last I looked, we were trading at about 74. So truly, the business transformation has been remarkable. But I think about what HR has to do for a successful integration in buckets. And there's cultural components to each of those buckets. So there's the bucket where we've got a very small group of people who are working on senior leadership things, executive compensation, the new SLT structure, changes to that, the operating model. And that's an isolated group, but they're starting early on, and they're thinking big about the overarching culture. And then you've got your HR IMO, Integration Management Office team. Again, early on, that's a small group of people led by, usually a single HR individual who's laddering up to a larger IMO office. And that team is focused on what are the benefits going to look like going forward for this merged organization, looking at both both companies' benefits. How are we going to integrate systems? Those big enterprise questions. And those are cultural decisions too, right? Which system are we going to use? Are we going to continue, with some of the healthcare options from the company that's being acquired? So there's that group of work. There's the group of work that we're doing with OD. So you've got another work group there. How are we going to approach the deep functional org design once close happens? What processes are we going to use? What performance criteria are we going to use for assessment and placement? Again, it's cultural, because each company is coming into it with different performance metrics, different performance paradigms. So you've got to align on that. And then, finally, the change management and communications piece of it. And in my practice, I've usually partnered very, very closely with our Corp Comms department. We have a stellar corporate communications group and internal communications to do that. And one of the things I declared early on in this particular acquisition is I don't want to see a change curve anywhere, right? Change management, culture, communications, that very specific body of work, it has to be organic, especially in a company like ours that we're so much about our brand and about our culture. And if we're going to do this right, and if we're going to successfully integrate culturally 30,000 people, with 52,000 people, and maintain that energy and that excitement, it's got to be done the way we know how to do it. So in not so much of a nutshell, that's my philosophy.
All right, well, we're out of time. It went by way too fast. I don't know if you felt like that, but I certainly did. I could have listened for a lot longer. I want to thank Liz McAuliffe, the EVP of HR for T-Mobile, for sharing, so many different perspectives. And, the best way to try to save an iPhone if it accidentally takes a bath.
Be very quick.
Yeah. So stay right where you are, because it's Terminator Judgment Day, and the bots are coming for you in just a minute. We're going to reset the stage and debate robots. And while the humans in here are debating them, they're out there conspiring. And just remember that. Thank you.